Hey everybody, Richard Harris here with Scott Leese for another episode of Surf and Sales podcast. We are excited to be joined today by the founder and CEO of Chili Piper, Nicolas Vandenberghe. Nicolas, good morning and thanks for joining us today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I know that it is March 3rd, and I know we were sort of talking quickly before we joined this about how your team's 100% remote, and with this whole coronavirus thing that's going around, there's a lot of value to that fact.
Yeah, you're right. We had seen the future.
Yeah,
We had, let's not have an office where everybody's gonna get sick. Let's put people everywhere. Right.
Right.
So we have 42 people in 36 cities in 16 countries. So hopefully the coronavirus will not set on Chili Piper. There will be a place where somebody's safe.
Yeah, and hopefully it doesn't set on anybody that we know, or people we don't.
Right.
But just out of curiosity, when you were deciding to build the organization, did you start off in an office and go, wait, this doesn't work, or hey, this is limiting us? Like, it's unusual, but I think we're moving in that direction to have more remote workers, right? Where did that come from you, or is that just something that's just how you sort of saw it always?
No, it was by design. It was by design. I've done several companies before, different startups, and often, as you know, it's always hard to find engineering talent. So I would find engineering talent in other countries. My first startup, I was not very creative. I went to France, that's where I'm from originally. Then I tried other countries, and I could tell it was working quite well to have an office, in another country. And that's a very traditional model. A lot of companies have multiple offices. And then I thought, as I was hiring people, I thought, it's difficult to find talent, and yet there's talent everywhere in the world. There are smart people. That's my big belief. There are smart people everywhere in the world, and why not access this talent pool? So that was when we started Chili Piper, we said we're going to just go find smart people wherever they are and make it work. We'll find a way to make it work remotely. And then the second piece that led us to do that is Alina, my wife and co-founder, and I are very passionate about traveling. We love being in different places, and we thought, nowadays you're a knowledge worker. Here we are on our computer. We could be anywhere, and we should not only be able to do that, but let all of our employees do that. If they want to travel, they can do that. So it was very much by design. It was a combination that we find the right people, and we give them a lifestyle that we ourselves would love to have. Do love enjoying, because that's what I do. I spend about a third of my time in California, in LA. I spend a lot of time in France. The rest of my time is here in Brooklyn. I'm just back from Mexico City, where we spent a week. You want to have this option to be where you want, and I think nowadays with computer works, it's completely possible. So it was very much by design, and it's working great. Everybody's happy. We have 2 employees in our CS team. We decided out of the blue that they will go to Colombia, South America. I just talked to them yesterday. They said, we're going to go to Madrid. It's life is wonderful.
What are some of the tools and tricks of the trade that you use to manage an entirely remote company, and not just remote, but like 16 different countries? I can't even. How many time zones is all that? Like in any 24-hour period, you've got somebody probably working.
A lot of time zones, but there's something that helps us. A lot of the engineers, the people who are further east, in Eastern Europe and so on. And, engineers tend to, unlike Richard, they don't wake up at 7. Right? They wake up late and finish late.
I've been up since 6:30. Thank you. Just so you know.
Wow. So it works well, because they can start there later and finish later. And in California, we typically start the day at 7. Yeah. So that's how we adjusted. We have some people on the west who start early, and some people on the east who finish late. Overall, there's a big overlap, and it's working fine. I have found that it's harder from California to work with people. We have one guy in Moscow, Russia, so that's far. And until now, we have not, for that reason, hired in Asia. because then there would be like, it's just like you're upside down on your head, right? It's like
Right.
it's the middle of the night. I'd love to find a way to work with Asia, because as I said, Asia is a very populous part of the globe and with a lot of talent, but that time difference has been a constraint. As for your question about the tools, we start with the basics. So we do our meeting on Zoom, as you would expect. We use Slack to communicate in real time, basic. And then we have a few things that are more advanced. So how we make decisions, for example, has become quite a fascinating process. Typically in companies, you call a meeting and say, we need to decide what feature we put in the product next or not, or we need to decide what pricing we do. You get a meeting, get 6 people around the table, they argue. So some smart guy called Jeff Bezos said, that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is somebody write a decision memo, 6 pages, and then you start the meeting with a decision memo, and then you discuss the decision memo, make decisions. So that was a good improvement on decision-making process. And I believe that we've taken it to the next stage. So we have somebody write a decision memo. We don't call a meeting. We upload the decision memo on Google Doc, and then people comment on it, right? And the beauty of it is that you have time to think of what you're going to comment on, right? You can even research, edit, and you see all the comments and discussion. So the discussion is actually asynchronous. People do it at their leisure. But you see all these great ideas and feedback coming out. You don't have that problem. In meetings where people want to sound smarter, so they just say something just to sound smart. Well, on the Google Doc, it gets edited out. So that's how we make our decision, and it's very impressive how it works. Typically, if it's a complex decision, we will still call a meeting at the end to nail down the last bit. But by the time we call that meeting, we already have a good sense for where things are going.
What do you call a complex decision, right? Because I could see, for you, maybe pricing is not a complex decision, and you can use a decision memo. For other people, and I think you've exercised this muscle, so you're comfortable with it. But for other people, I could see them going, oh my God, we can't do this, remote on a document. Like, what do you call a complex decision?
Yeah, so pricing would be one of a complex decision. Product positioning and pricing is an example of a complex decision. Product roadmap priorities is typically a complex decision, right? What do we do next? Let me give you an example of a less complex decision. We just procure an LMS. We wrote a decision memo on it, right? So we had a couple of our guys did all the research, came up with what our goals are, beautifully written decision memo, what our goals are, what our options are, the pros and cons of the different options, and their recommendation. And
how does that, at your level, does that help also create that level of autonomy, giving people the ability to own a project? And so from a certain perspective, maybe you get to sit back and you're sort of the final decision maker, but ultimately it lets you delegate a lot of these decisions and then grow your people.
Yeah, you got me. It's all about not having to do the work and let other people do it. No, you're right. Absolutely. They're in charge, right? So they create this decision memo. At the end, I just review, and by the time I look at it, they have the autonomy. So I have still the final approval, but by the time I look at it, there's enough comment that you can tell where things are going. And if I'm going to go against the crowd, I better be well prepared. I typically don't do that. I don't say if I feel the decision is wrong, it's not the way I want to go. Then I'll explain why I think it's not right, and I'll reopen the decision memo. It has happened to us where we've done three back to back because. I think that's not quite right. We haven't considered these other aspects, so we open a new decision memo to do that. But yes, you're right. The people are autonomous that way, and they can control the decision that matter to their particular job. Yeah.
How large is the sales team at Chili Piper right now?
So we have 5 SDRs, 6 A's, 2 AM, 3 CS.
So it's fairly common, I think, for distributed and remote organizations to have engineering and product and marketing. It's a lot less common to have sales org completely distributed. Have you found there to be any unique challenges specific to running a distributed sales organization?
So I'll tell you a funny story about that. When we started, Chili Pepper helps salespeople, so we exposed to a lot of sales team. So at some stage, we need to build our SDR team, right? It was at the beginning was me doing all the sales. The first $1 million, I was just hitting people at meetups and so on, and trying to get deals. At some stage, I said, okay, it's time that we grow up and we have an SDR team. And I looked among our customers at the companies that were the most effective at booking meetings. And I found a company called Snack Nation. Have you guys heard of Snack Nation?
I know them very well.
That's why Kevin Dorsey worked,
Right.
And these guys were completely crushing it. They were the target per month was 80 meetings a month. And I'm thinking, this is out of the world. So at some stage, one of their managers, Michael Tusso, called me and said, hey, I'd like to work for Chili Pepper. And I thought, I was waiting for that call because, I want to know what you guys know that other people don't, right? So Michael is in Culver City in LA. And I said, come and build our team. I said, okay. And he said, number one requirement is we have space in LA because we have to all be in the same place. And I say, well, why is that? He said, well, sales devs have to be in the same place. You have to be with them, you have to be behind them, and so on. So we hired 2 people in Culver City in LA. We start the work. It doesn't work out. These 2 guys don't work out. Then by chance we found another guy, but he's not in LA. So we decided to hire him. And then he starts performing. And next thing, Michael Tusso tells me, you know what, I'm going to move to San Francisco. And even though there was nobody in San Francisco. And next thing, the whole thing got distributed and we started getting better and better performance. Even though something like 9 months earlier, he had said it's impossible to do it remotely.
He changed his tune entirely.
That's right, exactly. And then partly is because it was obvious that it was working with this guy was not in LA. Another part is because like the rest of us, he wanted to live somewhere else, and you don't want to have to change job and have a constraint because you want to live somewhere else. So he was living the very foundation of Chili Pepper, which is you want to be free to live where you want. And so ever since we've had all our sales distributed. As to your question about challenges, I find that Zoom works really well. You can have your one-on-ones are very effective over video. It's almost as good as being in person.
I think the stereotypical kind of concern and worry is like, what are the salespeople doing all day long? It's harder to motivate them. Maybe it's we don't get as much activity, right? If you're still looking at things like dials and meeting set and all this kind of stuff. So none of that has proven to be true.
Well, no, because everything is digital. I know exactly how many activities my guys do at any time. I log in.
Know the number, but is it? I think somebody might argue that the number is less than it would be if everybody was in the office. That's like the old school.
That's a very old school, but that's something actually very fundamental that I think is going to profoundly affect the world of sales, and it's already affecting the world of sales.
How do you handle training from that perspective, right? It's like particularly, I think I'm falling into that stereotype of like, okay, if I've got an old school AE who's done this, for 3, 4, 5 years, I can give them some basic training. But what about that SDR? What about that person who's brand new to sales? How do you guys effectively train around that?
So same for AE and SDR, it's the exact same way we do it. The big difference now in the past was that in the past you'd send a salesperson to meet a client. He would take his car, come back, he'd say, how did it go? And he said, went great. Now nobody goes with their car. They get on Zoom, they do a video call. The call is recorded. If he comes back, say, how did it go? He say, went great. Well, let me watch the recording, right? And everything is recorded. So to your question, Scott, activities, we know how many emails and calls they make because everything is recorded. The content of what they do is recorded, right? So to your question, Richard, how do we train them? Well, we use the recording and we say, let me look at how you handled it. and we go through the recording and how to improve, and we do that over Zoom, over video. So it's a different world now. We know exactly what they do, and we have very few deals. Actually, I can think of any deal where we was in person.
I think it's really encouraging and a great story to hear about how you're running the sales organization and the success that you all are having, because it sort of flies in the face of old school traditional logic around managing sales teams. I mean, even Michael, has done a 180 on it over the course of the last year or so. I think that you said. So I think it's really good to get these kind of successful stories out there.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, there is value in getting together sometimes. Sure. You guys have these programs, Surf and Sales. I get it. It's awesome, right? You together, there's more energy, you get it.
Yeah.
But you don't need Surf and Sales 365 days a year, right? See what I mean? At some stage, you also have to call your customers, send a lot of emails, and you cannot be with to report. So we do these gatherings,
You're famous in the sales world for these gatherings. For example, if I'm not mistaken, you had like your version of President's Club or something like that in Ibiza. Right?
Yeah, no, in Ibiza,
right?
Yeah. No, but it was not. It was President's Club, except that every single employee in the company made it to President's Club. So we all went there. We all went there.
You all went there.
It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. 3 days in Ibiza. We went to do the closing of the Pasha Club, with champagne. It was unbelievable. Yeah. And the year before, we had gone to Paris, and it was also unbelievable. It was less festive, but it was magical to get everybody together.
I can hear every salesperson listening to this right now typing away, going to Chili Piper's website, seeing if they have.
We're hiring. There was the guy who applied and got the job like 2 weeks before Ibiza, and he said, "Am I going to go to Ibiza?" And I said, "Well, yeah."
That's a hell of an onboarding experience.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
I've sent people in sales contests and spiffs and things like that to Paris and to Ibiza and all that kind of thing. But you've taken it to another level when you bring
when you bring everybody. Yeah.
But you don't have that opportunity to have everybody together very, very often, but maybe once a year or something like that. So it's probably even more powerful and
very much so. Very much so. It is very special. Imagine all these people you've only been chatting with on Slack and Zoom, and all of a sudden you're together with them on the beach or on the boat, because we rented a boat and went cruising. It's very special. And what I loved about it is that even though we have, I think we have 16 countries, so we have 16 nationalities. People from different nationalities and different craft, so engineers with sales, mix up together, very naturally. It's amazing. And also I tell other people in companies, when you're in the same office, there's some cliques that start forming, like groups and people.
Oh, sure.
Right. Yeah. Whereas when everybody's everywhere, it's a lot less likely, right? You just it's pretty much the same. So it's an amazing experience when we get together. Right now we have a big contest to decide where we're going to go next. We're looking at skiing in Chile, or going to the beach in Colombia, or the places. So it's a tough world to decide.
These decisions, right? Really terrible options, right? Let's go back a little bit. Tell everybody what Chili Piper is and what you do, and talk a little bit about the ICP and the sales cycle and what the deal making process is like.
Yeah, so I started the company because I have this strong thesis that the world of sales, the way sales is done, is going to change dramatically, and digital tools are going to have a major role in that change, right? So I call it building the system of action for salespeople. The reason why we call it system of action is because, in our view, system of record, which is the CRM where you keep the record, is already established. It does great, but it doesn't help people do their job. It just helps track and it helps managers. So there is a need for tools that help people, salespeople.
It's like the next wave, the next evolution.
That's exactly right. So there are many tools coming out right now to help salespeople do their job. It's an exciting time. At Chili Pepper, we started with scheduling. So we started with helping salespeople book their meeting and manage their meetings. That makes sense because meetings are a key part of the sales process. And then more specifically, we found a part of the process in sales that was very broken, and we decided to fix it. That's the inbound process. So the inbound process is, before we existed, was as follows. A prospect, marketing would spend a lot of dollars. They'd get a prospect. The prospect would come to the website. The prospect would fill a form, click submit, and it would say, somebody's going to, thank you, somebody's going to call you. And then they'd be left wondering, well, who's going to call me when?
Yeah.
Then there was an SDR team who was under a stick to call these people quickly, and then the SLA of 10 minutes or 2 hours or whatever it was. And they sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. In the net of it, companies would lose more than half their inbound pipeline that way. So we solved that problem. That's what our product does. It's called concierge. It's actually a French word, but not in the French way. When a prospect submits a form, we have a smart JavaScript that automatically gets the data, can do a data augmentation, qualify the prospect, find the rep who should talk to this prospect, dial the rep, dial the prospect, they're in touch. Or if the rep is not available, we can retrieve the calendar, expose the calendar, and they connected and they booked. So that doubles conversion rates on the inbound. That's a big product. That's what we do right now. We've just announced other pieces of the puzzle that we're working on. One is inbox. So we're working on a super cool inbox to help salespeople do their job. So we are going to extend in another direction. But right now, our bread and butter is this.
So you're selling into sales and marketing.
Yes, that's right. We're selling to sales and marketing.
Yeah. And what is the target market for you guys? Who's like the ideal customer? Are you selling to, small businesses and
well, so if you think of
big enterprise, kind of companies, or everything in between?
Yeah, if you think of our product, so which company is a website where they propose to book a meeting and interested in talking to people? That's a lot of companies, right?
Yeah.
So that's our market, right? And we have HP, Facebook, Intuit as customers because they need to engage with the customers, and we have much smaller companies. I can't think of small companies right now, but we have companies with less than 10 employees. We think, I'm just going to make sure that my inbound prospects are well processed. Typically, as for many tech companies, our early adopters are also tech companies. So because they move faster, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be that way. So our first customer was a company called 5 Stars, and our second was a greenhouse in New York. And then
5 Stars loyalty program.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they were a client of mine for over 2 years.
I love these guys. They were awesome.
Early advice.
Yeah, awesome. They're still a customer all these years later. We're happy to have them. So the tech companies came to us, but just because they're more forward thinking. Now we have LA Film Institute as customer to book with their students. Remote Year, the school program to travel around the world. They book all their meetings with us, with Chili Pepper. So we have a broad set of customers. It's either B2B or B2 high C, right? So the high touch C, and anybody with enough inbound to justify it.
You've been an entrepreneur. Do you even know how many times? Do you know how many companies that you've started?
That's a good point. I can't help it. I can't help it. I tried to be a venture capitalist. So I had an exit in the early 2000s, that was good. And I thought, okay, I should be a venture capitalist, because I thought that's what entrepreneurs do when they grow up.
Because that's what you do, right? After you sell your company,
You say, okay, you go and tell people that they're idiots, and anyway, they do it to the wrong. So
their ideas suck,
every time I tell someone they're an idiot, I get in trouble.
Because you're not a venture capitalist.
That's because you're not a venture capitalist. Exactly. When you have $500 million behind you, ready to be handed over, then you can tell a lot of different things.
Apparently, the size of the checkbook matters.
That's what it seems. Yeah, the world's unfair, but that's how it goes, isn't it? So I did that for more than a year. I was a venture capitalist, and I just couldn't do it, because whenever I see somebody say, well, you need to do this and that and the other, and I felt like saying, let me jump in and do it for you, right? And I said, what's something wrong there? So I went back to an operational role. After being a VC, I took this job as VP of sales in a telecom company, because it was this unbelievable project. I've got to tell you that story, where this friend of mine called me. He was CMO at a big telecom firm, and he says, I'm doing a startup. And I said, that's awesome. That's going to be a big change for you, coming from this big telco world. He said, well, our startup has $2 billion in funding. And our startup has $2 billion.
That's not a startup.
Right. And he said, we're going to rebuild the network over the US and kill Verizon Wireless and AT&T. So I said, how are you going to do that? I said, we're going to raise $10 billion with a hedge fund guy, and then we're going to do a white label for the service. So we will not have to pay for all the advertising and all the stuff that you get from wireless carriers. We will have existing companies do it. So I thought, wow, that's genius. Can I get involved? They said, well, do you know anything about telecom? I said, no, but I know sales. So I interviewed with a hedge fund guy and with my friend, and I got the job VP of sales. And I started selling the services of this $10 billion network to companies like Google and Google.
So can I pause you there for a second?
Yeah.
I need to know like what you learned about the life of a vice president of sales that you didn't really know prior to being in that role. Like you had your own company, you had an exit.
Yeah, so I had run sales team before, so I was qualified to run that thing. What I learned about the VP of sales in a $2 billion telco firm versus my firm before was that transportation is of a different kind. Namely, they had the private jet to fly me to Google.
Oh gosh!
Where before, I had to take my Honda.
I don't have that life.
This is not the conversation Scott wanted to hear from you.
Yeah, I'm always using like Hotel Tonight, so they can. I have to book like whatever discount.
I know.
They'll pay for me to stay in. Yeah.
And make sure that your expense report is going to be approved.
That's right. Yeah.
It's going to be deemed because
when you're a VP of sales at an early stage company like me, they're like scrutinizing your dinner bill, trying to figure out how you spent $35 at dinner, because that's too much. Yeah, meanwhile, Nicolas is flying around in a private jet.
Indeed. And the guy, Sundar Pichai, was head of the Chrome business unit. So the guy was now CEO of Google. And so I have this meeting with him, and true story, the guy said, wow, your dream comes true. We want to buy your services. And I, with my friend, we step out and say, so what do you think we should do? And say, let's ask for prepayment. Are you ready for the size of the prepayment?
Yeah.
$500 million.
Oh my God.
We say, sign the contract, $500 million prepayment. And so we walk back in, and Sundar goes, that seems reasonable.
Oh my God.
You might be the first VP of sales I know who closed one deal worth $500 million.
I just got the title of the podcast episode is how to close $500 million in a prepayment.
Yeah, I don't want no one else. No other guest on the podcast is allowed to brag about their biggest deal ever again.
No. Look, but there's an unfortunate twist to the story. Otherwise, I would probably still be there. That's project thing. as we started, so the deal was ready in place, and we had other deals of similar, Amazon was prepaying 120 million. It was a small deal, right? And as we started building the network and deploying, the spectrum we're using was close to the GPS spectrum. And it turned out that as we started broadcasting, we were interfering with the GPS signal, at least so claim some people, namely the US Army said that we were interfering with their missiles and airplanes. And so, which is a problem, right? You don't want a missile here and there lost in translation of the GPS spectrum. So they passed a law that we were not allowed to use our spectrum, and the entire company went up in smoke.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
You could write a book. You could write a book about this.
What would just out of curiosity?
I'll talk to in a podcast about it.
Yeah.
But what was just out of curiosity? So you collected that level of money from someone like Google, right? You're at the highest level. How do you go back and tell them that? Do they get it? Are they like, yeah, we know that kind of stuff happens because they're in that level?
At that level, Richard, there was a lot of scrutiny, right? We immediately, when that happened, we immediately informed our customers that we had a problem. But it was in the press; they would have known even if we hadn't. And everything is managed very closely. And they were on our side, right? I mean, they wanted
the deal to happen.
Yeah. They wanted this network. So they didn't.
Did you have to give money back?
Yeah.
Okay. So much for the private jet.
That's right, exactly.
That's what he learned, Scott. $500 million is not $500 million.
It was good way it lasted. Yeah.
What were you like as a kid? Were you entrepreneurial? Were you always building businesses?
I grew up in Marseille. Guys know where Marseille is?
No.
I know it's in France.
Yeah, it's in France. Good job. Yeah, it's a big port on the Mediterranean, so in the south near the Riviera, and
I've been living my life completely wrong. Nicolas has.
Come and work for Chili Pepper. You can be there if you feel like it. You can be anywhere. So I wasn't exposed to entrepreneurship as such. It was just not something that people did around me. But I was always, let's call it adventurous. So I just wanted to do new things. So I remember I had a little motorbike when I was 14, and I tour around Corsica, this island between France and Italy, just out of the blue at age 14. So then I took jobs, like I was my first job was selling newspapers. When I moved to Paris, and I started selling newspapers, and I loved selling newspapers. So that I had a lot of activity. My real exposure to entrepreneurship was in the mid-90s. I came to Stanford to go to business school, and I met all these tech entrepreneurs, including Steve Jobs. So then I thought, wow, that's what I've wanted to be all my life without knowing it, and that's what I'm going to do from now on. Yeah. This concept, you start company, you build products, you bring them to market. It's just too awesome to not live your life that way, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
What ever have, aside from this big one, right? But ever have one of the companies you start just fail, not work, and any experience with sort of overcoming that level of adversity?
Right. Yes. That has happened. My second company, my first company had a good exit. And then I doubled down on a second company, which was around the year 2000. So it was an e-commerce company. I started in 1999 actually, and I surfed the bubble. So I went from 0 to 65 employees in 11 months. And we had, I think we had like $5 million in bookings. So the prepayment also, it wasn't a $500 million prepayment, but we added up. It was this e-commerce platform with tons of customers. One of our board members joked that VC's money put money in these companies, and they give us the money immediately, right? Because they say, you have to prepay for our service. So we grew super fast, and I had kept 3/4 of the company. So at actually 72% company, and we got a lot of interest from corporations like Yahoo, Amazon, and CNET. And CNET, if you remember this company, made an offer for $60 million. And so that was 42 million for me, right? And I said, let's do it. 11 months paychecks, that seems reasonable.
11 months. That's all it's got. We just need to bust our ass for 11 months, buddy.
Well, wait, because it works a bit differently. So then we start negotiating, and then I get a call from Halsey Miner, CEO, said, hey, I don't know if you saw, but the stock dropped. It was February 2000. So let's give it a couple of weeks so that I can. Talk about ghosting, right? We in sales, we all have to deal with ghosting.
Yeah.
Imagine when it's the acquirer who's ghosting on you,
wow.
and you have 42 million money at stake. So the reason why he was ghosting me is that, as you all know, the market never recovered. Every stock dropped, every VC funding dried out, and I ended up doing a deal with Microsoft, barely covering the asset price.
So you went from this really quick and nice exit to nothing, off the table.
To a long struggle, and ended up with a deal with Microsoft when I personally didn't make any money. I mean, there was a deal that it was a deal that worked for really well for the employees, for sure. They got great jobs and have friends now at Microsoft and Amazon. That's just, but you went from a extreme to the other, yeah.
So Nicolas, my computer froze, so I missed that part of the story. So I'm going to have you restate that part of the story after you said the market dropped, because otherwise other people are going to be like, what the hell just happened to the story? So
so the market dropped. I was telling how Halsey Miner, the CEO, ghosted on me. He never came back. All the VC funding dried out. It was 2000, right? The dot bomb.
Right.
All our customers went under, and I had to lay off more than half the company. And in the end, the deal that we did, we sold the company to Microsoft, MSN Shopping, as I said, at the price that barely covered the asset price. So at the price where I didn't make any money myself. The employees were taken care of, the investors reasonably compared to what could have happened. And so it was quite
$60 million ghost prospect.
That's right, exactly.
So the next time one of your clients ghosts you, Richard, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, right.
You
think it could be worse, right? There could be 42 million at stake, and
that's all right.
That's what happened.
I have a whole breakups cadence of how I either blame them for the problem or make them feel massively guilty. So
the thing I've learned is that the markets are stronger than you, right? You can be ready, but they in both directions, because they carried us excessively at the beginning. We had so many customers, I think, a lot of money because they were just being funded and told to spend the money. And then the other way, on the way down, it worked the same way, where it was excessive. Like every VC shut down everything, and that's stronger than you. So you have to understand that. The next startup I did, I sold quickly also for that reason. I said, I'm not going to take a chance. I did the biometrics company. It was this awesome system to recognize faces that worked really well, and I exited quite quickly. Now with Chili Pepper, as we
you've been at this for over 4 years now.
Yeah, I started 2016.
Marathon for you.
Right, that's right, exactly.
Yep.
And we've had some small offers, but this is different. This time, I don't need an exit. I'm all good. I just want to build this company for the long term. I think we have a very large opportunity ahead of us in sales tech. Plus, I love it. I work with salespeople. I talk to people like you. It's a very fun ICP, ideal customer profile to salespeople.
What do you see as the trends in 2020 and 2021?
In our space?
Yeah.
Or in general?
Both. Either one.
So if we start in general, I as Scott pointed out, right now there is this risk with this virus that everybody's freaking out about, that the year could turn sour, and all this beautiful economic boom that we're experiencing could vanish. So that would be a problem. But assuming that doesn't happen, or even if that happens in our space, I can see that the the sales tech world is going to continue evolving, and we're going to see a lot more tools and new companies coming up, and more use cases being covered by tools. I think right now we think, oh, there's these companies that, so let's talk about the Sales Loft and Outreach, for example, right? They've done a really great job, and think, oh, there's these two companies that are going to dominate. But I think that there will be a lot of other use cases where great solutions are going to come up, and very successful companies will emerge. So you can look at the Drift, for example, and say, oh, this chat for marketing is not well done, I'm going to do it better, and they took off. And I think that's going to be a lot of other use cases that get better covered, and other companies that are going to be very successful.
Yeah,
that's my take on sales tech.
What do this is kind of the end of the show, and we try to flip things around and see if we can be helpful to you. Is there anything that, Richard and I can do to add value and try to help you and support what you're doing?
Well, I mean, two things for sure. I mean, right now, you can help get Chili Pepper better known, without a doubt, because there's still a lot of people who are not aware. So there's still a lot of companies that have this broken process on their inbound, where people submit a form and they say, thank you, who's going to call you, instead of connecting directly with the sales team. So that needs to be evangelized, because it makes no sense. Like it makes no sense to lose half your pipeline when you have the solution not to do that. And the other piece more is, like as I said, I'm in Chili Pepper for the long term, so I'm always interested in learning, and every feedback we can learn, tools you've heard about that work well, the techniques you've heard about that work well. I mean, you guys, you do the advanced training, so you talk to a lot of salespeople, what problems they have, what solution they found, all that knowledge is something that is very valuable, and we'd love to hear more. So. Yeah. This podcast, any other content you can publish to share the information is very valuable to us.
I actually have one last question. You're clearly very successful. You've had several successful exits. You've reached an echelon that I think many of us aspire to be, or reach. What podcasts do you like to listen to? Where do you go to keep learning?
So first of all, I'll say podcast is a bit new to me. I don't have a commute, because we a lot of people listen to podcasts in their commute, and we don't have a commute because we're a distributed company. So I set my office across the street from my apartment. So it's a new thing to me, and I'm discovering these podcasts. So I'm not the best person to when it comes to my traditional ways to keep learning is books. I read a lot of books around sales, so I try to read most of them. And then, of course, our friend at Modern Sales Pros and these communities where people discuss how they do things, I find them very, very valuable. So I do spend a lot of time reading. I don't necessarily, often I read too late, so I can't reply something that would be useful, but I do read. I love hearing about problems people have, what's not working, and then smart solutions that other people have found. So it's a broad set to answer your question.
No, that's a good answer. So, well, Nicolas, this has been fascinating, man. So thank you so much for joining us. We're really glad to have you.
Yeah, my pleasure. I enjoy it. So good luck with everything. I know you guys are crushing it, and I'm sure we'll be in touch very soon.
Yeah, and just so you know, assuming the virus goes away by September, you could actually set up an office for a week at Surface Sales, right? You could come and work from
Chili Pepper HQ.
Where are you going in September?
Either southern Mexico or somewhere in Costa Rica.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah. So, well, Nicolas, thanks
All right.
again, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.